name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Brothers and sisters, good morning, and to our guests watching from afar, I greet you on this feast day and a Sunday, which is the exaltation of the true cross. As you know, if you've been reading, we're celebrating actually the first crusade in history, that Constantine the Emperor, having only recently ratified and legalized Christianity from centuries now of persecution, would then decide that the new Roman Republic, the new imperial Rome, would need an object. It would need something. And so it was decided that they would launch the first crusade, sending his mother and a patriarch to Jerusalem with a huge retinue, soldiers, horses, you know the story. It would make a good movie, actually. And they go to the Holy Land, and they go on a long search and a journey, inquiry. And as we know from our history, they will not discover just the true cross. They'll discover all three crosses. And it's on this site that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was erected. And so it took a lot of inquiry, and the details of the story are complicated, but I'd like to point out to you that the first crusade actually was done in peace. The first crusade was not done over blood to be shed, but blood that was shed. And the first crusade produces for us, Christians, an object. And we're fortunate to have, in icon form, that object here before us, which was laid here, set here before us last night. And there is a relic also, too. In fact, for centuries, this object, the true cross, was intact in Jerusalem. And it was so valuable that Persian pagans even came, defeated the city, and that was the treasure they took back with them. And it would take another crusade. This one would be a bloody crusade, led by a Byzantine emperor by the name of Heraclius, who will go with a great army into Persia, defeat them, and bring it back. And so the cross actually has two moments when it is first discovered and brought out of the earth, brought back out. And then in that moment when it was decided for the second time in history that it would actually be raised up. And this is why today's feast is called the Exaltation. Sometimes it's referred to as the triumph, that the exalting of the object, the raising it up and bringing it back up again and having it be like this again. And all of the icons feature this. Today's icon actually features just the wood of the cross, and with the patriarchs and other ecclesiastics actually holding it up. In reality, they needed a lot more help than that, but you get the point, that it would come back up again in the point of glory and re-propitiate the image of Good Friday, the icon of Good Friday, which is the raising of Christ upon the cross, the dropping it into its foot. And there comes then the 3 hours of the Passion, which we hear about in the Gospel, that would be repeated again in the 4th century and brought up, but not with a body upon it, but just the cross by itself, that its saving power would be once again seen upright. And the image for this, of course, is in the book of Exodus, when Moses raises fashioned serpents made of bronze that are in the form of a cross and presents those to the people to heal them. And then on the recovery of the cross, after it's brought back a prisoner, no more, from Persia, it's brought back to Jerusalem again. And tradition has it, it was once again raised up. Interesting that the thieves of the cross apparently never dared to raise it up again. Oh, they had it. They knew they had a treasure. They got something. They got the object. But it stayed down, and it was hidden away. And so the victorious army that came and got it back had to do some work to bring this, and they had to do some work to bring it back to Jerusalem. And there it would stay until, unfortunately, the fateful decision was made to divide it and to begin to separate it. And then we have, for our sake, we have little splinters of the cross spread throughout the world. I have it on authority that at Mount Athos, in a well-guarded secret place, there is a very large fragment of the crossbar of the cross. That one fragment is still with us. That one is not being touched or separated or cut relics from it. That one is left alone. And in that sense, we have the object. We have a good sense of the object in front of us. And so that gives me a chance now to relate this little story of the cross, which is our history, to something that happened last night. By the way, you can see it last night. If you go to our webpage, you can review services that you missed. Hey, that's a good idea, isn't it? That's a holy idea. Review services that you missed. If you don't like our services, you can go to the monastery in West Virginia. They have services every day, and they have a good website. And you can catch up with all kinds of services that have been missed. And you can even go to sites in Russia. They're broadcasting too now. Beautiful, glorious services. It's impossible now not to go to church. See, COVID has done us a favor. There's no excuse anymore. Last night it was my privilege, although it happened because our rector was tired and the other clergy were indisposed, I got to celebrate the Feast of the Cross, something I think I've only done a couple of times in my whole life, and I'm on 29 years now. And I will tell you that there was a lot of commotion to prepare this icon. When I came into the church, my first question is, where is the icon? Where's the cross? The answer was, it's in the hands of the flower people. That was not speaking about hippies. That's speaking about our servants here who decorate this church. And I thought, okay, then it's safe. And then it came time for it to be brought into the church, and it was brought in. And that icon then was set on the prothesis table, the very place where the holy gifts are prepared. And there it waited. And then there was a small ceremony and a singing of the Trisagion, Sviati Božja, to take it from that place and then put it on this place right here. That's invisible. However, through the mercies and mysteries of cameras and COVID, you could probably see this. It may have been recorded last night. And there it waits. The icon waits with a candle posted in front of it in the down position, waiting and waiting and waiting until the end of the service. And then finally, when we sing again, Holy God, then it's brought out and then it's erected once again around the altar, coming out around and around, lots of motion. In some churches, especially in Jerusalem, this ritual is conducted by a bishop. And when he comes, it's even more glorious. And some of our churches in Rokor, they use the Jerusalem rite, where they actually raise the cross up, and it takes a great many deacons and servers to make this happen. They pour water over it, and the water falls on the cross, and it falls onto trays with flowers. And the crew that's working this moves these trays about, and every time the cross moves into this position in this Jerusalem rite, this water is poured over that. It's a magnificent ceremony. I have only seen it a few times in my life, and only in San Francisco at our church where the relics of St. John are kept to this day. Why do we do all of this? Why do we do this? As Orthodox Christians, you'd have to wonder, my gosh, those Orthodox certainly have a thing for this object. They're object-oriented people. Indeed, we are. Because in the liturgical life of the church, going through these motions, and at the end of this liturgy, we are going to come out and we're going to do the primary liturgical action before the cross, which is before thy cross. We bow down. We fall down, some translation. We fall down and worship. We're going to do that. It was prepared for last night. We're going to repeat it again this morning. Because on this day, once a year, the cross is exalted in front of us, iconically for us. It's repeated for us. And now I'll leave you with this. It says in the scriptures, St. Paul, the cross is a stumbling block for the Jews and utter madness for the Greeks, meaning the Hellenic pagan world. A bit of explanation. Why would the cross be a stumbling block for Jews? Quite simply, Messiah, for many Jews, was not supposed to die, but was supposed to lead Israel out of captivity once again become a new Moses, which Messiah is to be a new Moses. Jesus Christ is the new Moses, would lead them out of captivity, out of Roman bondage, and establish them again as a state, with the temple working and everything being proper. And ideally, the kingship of David would be restored somehow. That was destroyed, you understand, by Nebuchadnezzar centuries earlier. The idea that the Christ would die, and that's prophecy, and Jesus Christ makes it very clear throughout the Gospels, he's going to die. That's intolerable, and that's a stumbling block for the Hebraic tradition. Interestingly, it's not a stumbling block for Greeks, because for Greeks, the idea that God would become man is not a problem for them. The incarnation is actually not a difficult problem for pagans. They have such things in the mythology. Combinations of God and man for them are part of the storytelling, Hercules being one of the most famous. Even Alexander the Great believed himself to be half God. What's madness for them is that this God would be killed and tortured and disgraced. Now that makes no sense. The idea of a pagan god undergoing that is very alien. It doesn't fit into the culture. And so here we are between these two realities, stumbling block and madness. And here we are standing, masked and unmasked, awaiting and awaiting and awaiting. And so now we come to the problem of the object. Those who don't understand us might think that we are undergoing a neurosis right now, that we're having a neurotic relationship with an icon and with a ceremony. And that's because they would see us undergoing what Freud calls cathexis, that we're having an irrational, emotional, intense relationship with an action, an idea, or an object, one of these three things. And when this happens, when you come under cathexis, it's actually the beginning of neurotic behavior, because you don't understand, why am I behaving this way? Why is it I have to buy this object in order to be happy? And as you all know, you buy the object, you enjoy some happiness, and then the object doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make you happy anymore. In fact, you have what is called buyer's regret. If any of you experienced buyer's regret, you went through a process called cathexis, and then if you got rid of the object and got your money back, if you were successful to go back and get an exchange and just get your cash back, then you have catharsis. And between this notion of catharsis and cathexis really is the cross. Because the cross doesn't propose to actually lift our emotions and make us feel better. Comedy and tragedy do that for us. They are the premier ways to experience catharsis in the Western world. You go to comedy and you laugh, and you're lifted out of your miseries and your sufferings. You can forget about the hardships of life. You go and you watch a tragedy. It's not necessary to see these very often because the effect is so strong. You see a tragedy. You enter into the tragedy from the very first moment of the very first word of Hamlet. You know that this is going to end badly. You know that Hamlet won't survive this. And the fact that he's speaking to a ghost really underscores this. That's catharsis. We enter into it knowing the ending because we go through this process. The cross is super catharsis. It's why Rome needed this object. It's also super cathexis. It's beyond objects. It's the one object where you can't exchange it back. You can't get your money back from it. It's the one object that if you focus on it, it will not make you neurotic. It's the one object that you can have an intense, deep, emotional relationship with, even a physical relationship with, and it won't overwhelm you. It won't leave you washed out and wiped out, as you know from shopping. It's one of the problems of shopping now with the internet and COVID days here. People are getting wiped out. Also, credit cards are exploding. I understand that there's an explosion of credit card debt yet again because of this. The cross can't do that. It does not possess that defect. It possesses the power, actually, to transfer us all out of the need for catharsis. and it transfers us out of the need for an object. I'll leave you with this. Recently, it was very stylish for rock stars and Hollywood personalities to wear rosaries around their neck and to wear big crosses for earrings and big decorations with enormous crosses. And even when I'm around young people sometimes, if I happen to wear a better cross, I will get remarks on this. I get compliments. And they will say, "You've got some really good bling," and things like that. The jewelry aspect of the cross some years ago was very, very popular. And now that Christianity is not popular, it's more despised now. People are now wearing the rosaries, but they clip the cross off of it now. I've seen this. They wear the rosary to let you know that, oh yes, this is a rosary, but they clip off the cross. Other objects have replaced it. The process of Cathexis is going on and moving and moving and moving. We don't have to live that way. We receive crosses on baptism. We wear them. We treasure them. Hopefully, I trust that every single one of you has one displayed in your house or where you live, or certainly where you sleep, that the cross guides you, it stands over you. It's never laying down in the prediscovered position. In your house, it should be up in the exalted position. And ideally, you can see the last point here, that in the exalted position, that's the resurrection. That's what we're hoping for and praying for, that on the last day we will be called from the grave, standing aright, exalted through the power of the cross. God have mercy on us.